What's the biggest mistake you see these founders making when they're trying to scale that culture they had once it was with 15 people and now with 200?
The most destructive possible scenario is what most companies are doing. And that is just considering HR to be a group of clerks that take care of payroll and benefits and onboarding and offboarding. That's the biggest problem. We're at our best when we're not putting up a front where we're bringing authenticity to workplace. Listen, it took me 51 years to learn that.
Jim Morrisroe is the CEO of 15Five, a performance management platform used by over 3,500 companies and 400,000 employees around the world. After years in Silicon Valley and leadership roles at Slack and multiple startups, Jim is now on a mission to help managers become better leaders using data, emotional intelligence, and a whole lot of real-world experience.
The real impact that you can make is at the manager by manager level, and the recipe for every manager is a little different.
Is there one idea or principle that you're doubling down that you believe will define the future of work and performance that companies must start working with it?
We believe in the power of data, and we believe in the power that data gives you uniqueness to be able to look at manager by manager, employee by employee, and give recommendations to improve performance, engagement, and retention. My advice to smaller companies is maybe don't give a shit about any of this stuff. Just make sure your product has market fit and that you're making customers happy.
Coffee with experts.
Let's start with the show. Jim, thank you so much for coming here. How are you doing today?
You're welcome. I'm fantastic, and a fantastic intro too. Be
Nice.
careful. I might hire you for one of my teams, but anyway.
You wouldn't be the first. You wouldn't be the first to try that out. My boss is always crazy whenever I have a podcast. He's like, "Bro, please don't leave me."
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, "Bro, just a podcast. Come on." Okay.
Yeah.
Jim, why don't we start talking? I think we're actually to a very good start right here. As I said, you are very much enrolled in the talent optimization market. You know how to manage people. You know what to look for managers whenever you're looking for a manager. And I think we are right now in a very delicate moment in history. As people say, in this economy, nobody's getting a good job. If they are, it's very hard to get a job. People are making sure that they stay in a job as much as they can right now. If you go to Reddit, for example, there is a subreddit called Sales, where the general recommendation is if you can stick to where you are right now, you should do so. But we should start looking at it the other way. Companies should be the ones making the effort so that the employees want to stay. Companies should be the one leveling the ground so that the employees, whenever they receive a Jim asking to go to his company, they will say, "No, thank you, I'm very happy where I am." But we know that's still not the standard, and it's nice having 15Five making sure to help such companies. So I think my first question to you, so that we can set the tone about who you are as well, is why don't you tell us how you got yourself working at Slack as a sales guy, and then coming over as the CEO? I know that you succeeded the co-founder, David, and right now it's all up to you. So why don't you walk us through your history, and then we can move forward from that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I, like many folks that have had some success, there was a large degree of luck involved with my career. So I found myself in Silicon Valley in 1994 with some skills, but not any technical skills. I was good at presenting and selling and being personable, but I really found myself at the right place at the right time. And then I kind of relentlessly capitalized on that opportunity. So I started out selling, made my way into sales management. And then in 2000, I joined my first startup, and I caught startup fever. I was with big companies, but I loved the freedom of it all. I loved not having a playbook. I loved the brilliance of co-founders and technical entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, and the brilliance that I surrounded myself with. And so over the course of a career, I was able to just partner with just great companies in various capacities. Had the pleasure of several exits, including leading some of them. This is my third time being the CEO. I also have 4 kids, had a big California lifestyle for a while. What led me to 15Five was all of that added up to at a certain point in time where I was extremely unhealthy. I had chased life in a very fast way for too long. And my mental health, my physical health had deteriorated. And I had to go through a couple of things, and I've talked about it on other podcasts. I won't go into it here, but I had to go to a couple things. But when I came to find my next opportunity, which was 15.5, I wanted something that wasn't just about some tactical product. You know, the world needs security software, the world needs Slack, the world needs data center infrastructure, but it's very, very inhuman. It doesn't have a human aspect to a lot of those products. The companies do, but the product doesn't. And so what I wanted to find was what will hopefully be my last company, but I wanted to find something that was this blend of Silicon Valley and the humanity of helping companies improve their employee performance, engagement, and retention, and do so through their managers. And that to me was much more tangible to my life at the time, to what I think ultimately the world could benefit.
You see, as I told you before, I was actually on the video with another talent optimizer company, and I very much understood by that conversation how we're still, even though this should be already a given, and companies already should understand how they could and should prioritize their talent and how they should manage, it's still not the first thing that they start talking about. They go with UI, with UX, usually the customer. They focus way more on the external factors than the internal ones. And then the sales guy usually leaves and they start asking, why did he leave us? Now we're going to be delayed in regards to our quotas and our performances and whatnot. So my first question in regards to this situation right now is, since when did you, Jim, start loving humans? Because if I take a look at your career, it's clear that you love humans, and it's clear that you love the relationship side of things, and it's clear that you love talking to more people and getting to know them. Was it because of a singular experience that you had, something that shed a light across you, which told you like, hey, you need to start prioritizing those that you work around with? Or were you naturally always like this?
Well, I think my relationships have always been deep, and I have surrounded myself with people that that I know and that know me, and I'm vulnerable in those relationships. But I never applied that to business until I went through this kind of this life experience, and that ultimately led me to 15.5. And as I lead now, and as we give advice to our customers in even just like casual chat, or as we build products, I have a much better appreciation for the wholeness of my authenticity. And then as it pertains to our business and our product, how important it is for managers to bring whatever it is their authenticity is to the form of leadership, and how important it is for talent leaders or HR leaders to identify every unique attribute of both a manager and an employee, and try to create that programs and advice and learning journeys and tooling that that gets the most out of that relationship. And that we're at our best when we're not putting up a front, where we're bringing authenticity to
I agree.
workplace. Listen, it took me 51 years to learn that. I had my work face, and I had my human face, or my out of work face, and now I'm able to kind of blend it as a leader, and also hopefully bring products to market that do that better as well.
That's very nice. Very nice intro, might I add here myself. We are going to be talking about 15.5 and how that too helps, as I said already multiple times, in regards to managers and employees. Before we go deeper into 15.5, talking more about the market itself, what are the other tools in the HR tech world that people that are watching and listening to us should be mindful about? And you don't need to quote a specific tool, but just like as we have fintechs, as we have martechs, as we have sales tech, what else in the HR tech world can we find besides managing people faster and easier through apps?
Yeah. So let's just start. And I do want to just give a shout out to HR professionals. They have one of the hardest jobs on the planet. They've
That is true.
often been set up for failure, and they have a bad, in many ways, you go to some Reddit groups or God forbid X or some social media, like there is an unfair bias against HR. And I want to just say that the HR professionals that I meet every minute or every hour of every day are just amazing humans, and they're great business people as well. They just have a really tough job. So
It
the
is true.
stack of tools that HR has kind of fall into two categories. One is what keeps the business running from people perspective and a compliance perspective, and then how to make the business better through practices and tools and other techniques. And the compliance aspect of HR is the one that we're most familiar with: payroll, benefits, trainings that are required by certain regulations, onboarding, offboarding, those type of things. And in many ways, and in a lot of companies, that's the full-time job. HR is just, almost a G&A clerical function that's just like keeping people paid and with benefits. And that's a tragedy and it's usually the CEO's fault when that happens. The real benefit of HR is how can we see our people as a strategic tool, and how can we see our managers and our leaders as the leverage point, not for just retention and not just for engagement and not just for performance, although those are important. But
Hmm.
if we do those things right, the business will get better. Our profitability will go up. Our sales results will go up. Our strategic initiatives will go up. And it's connecting people programs and the leverage of managers to business results that is the most exciting component of it. And by the way, these markets are gigantic, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in these TAMs. But the area that 15.5 plays in is very much in this opportunity to use data to figure out where your problems are and then help managers be better versions of themselves.
Just to give the audience an even better idea what we're talking about, can you share a use case, maybe even the most common one that you find from those customers of yours,
Yeah.
where they had a life before 15.5 and a different one afterwards
Yeah.
15.5?
I will. 15.5, the relationship with us starts with data gathering. And these are traditional rituals in HR, like the performance review or a 360-degree leadership review or surveys. Tell me about your experience for your first 90 days, or an exit interview survey. There are these psychological assessments. I know you just met with the performance index people. Those are individual assessments. There's an organizational assessment called the engagement
Hmm.
survey. And so this data gathering are these rituals that are sometimes used to just make HR smarter. And they're also used to figure out raises and who deserves a promotion and how do we do better at performance. All 15.5 relationships start with data gathering in those rituals. Oftentimes in companies, that's where it stops. And what 15.5's products have evolved into over the last 3 or 4 years is the people analytics to then look at the combination of that data, and now in conjunction with AI, to understand where your most important issues are that you should focus on to ultimately make those numbers go up. And HR has traditionally done these blanketed programs. Once they look at results, oh my goodness, we have dropping engagement and we need to improve our benefits, or our CEO needs to get on stage and be more human, or we don't have goal clarity, so let's do OKRs. And these blanketed approaches,
Oh, yeah.
they sometimes work, but they're these big projects. And the real impact that you can make is at the manager by manager level. And the recipe for every manager is a little different. One manager needs to help with goal clarity, and one manager needs to help with their own integrity, and one manager needs to have harder performance conversations. And that's where 15.5 really differentiates in this market, is we have the education and the tools and the connection between HR and the managers to drive those unique prescriptions through a process and not lose track of it. And so we call it,
I'm sorry,
I'll stop, targets, not blankets. What we want to identify in these HR rituals is targeted behaviors that individual managers need to improve on, and give those managers the education and the tooling to make those changes, and to give HR the visibility if that stuff's if they're doing it and if it's working.
Do you see that a lot of managers are open to such improvements, are open to such changes because I can, with my brief work experience, I have had times where managers were like, I'm a know-it-all and I
Yeah,
don't want to improve myself, and if you're saying otherwise I will fire you. When of
yeah,
course we have managers who are like, I'm really here to listen to you, I'm not perfect, I know that I can improve, what can I improve?
yeah. The answer is usually not. They're not open to this, right? And if you
I
think about
imagine.
how people became managers, they were promoted in, especially in the front line, because they were the best at their craft. And they've never really been trained to being the best at your craft, and being a leader of people that do their craft are totally different jobs.
Totally.
And so that you develop, this thing called imposter syndrome, which is you're scared of the fact that you don't know how to lead, but you really know how to do the job. And so you do all the wrong things: tell people how to do their jobs, micromanage, have more ego than empathy, all these things. Once you're in that loop as a manager, you're in trouble. That's HR's job but those employees are good. They were great at their
Hmm.
craft. They could be managers. They just have to change their mindset. I have noticed that if HR has this holistic perspective and the support of the CEO, they can make this change, because the CEO will know how important that soft skills and people are to the business. If the HR leader does not have the support of the CEO and ultimately their executive team, I will sometimes tell our team, we got to walk away from that customer. We're going to, they're not going to be successful, and our relationship is going to be tainted because of that. And so it's critical that you say that. Most managers aren't open to it, but if the culture of the company and the leadership is committed to it, it can happen.
One, to bring light to the example you just gave, I have a very close friend of mine. He's the team lead inside of Wise, the digital
Yeah.
currency bank. And he's an iOS developer. He got there as an iOS developer, so good at his job, he rose to become a team leader. And he spent a month here at home, and we were talking all the time because most of his days were giving feedback, writing feedback, talking to his employees, of course, and
Of
managing
course.
it all over. And then I asked him, his name is Leo. I was like, Leo, but you were so good as a developer, right? Are you still developing? Are you still coding? Like, what's going on? And he told me that Wise already has this structure where if you're good at your craft and you
Yeah.
want to stay good at that craft and you don't want to handle people, you become a specialist. But on the other hand, if you are good at the craft, so you know how to help others with the same craft, but you understand that you can improve the overall team's ability by becoming a team lead, then you can become a team lead. So we have already those companies likewise doing the changes, understanding that not a customer, an employee, he can be good, but
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that he will be the best manager. I think this is the first thing the company should understand, right? It's not everybody
100%.
who's fit to become a team leader.
100%. And the best companies already have this figured out, and they know how to do these leadership development programs. Now, I believe they spend way too much money on consultants and training and
That's true.
content, offsites and assessments and all.
All hands, outside the visits.
Yeah, $60 billion just on education for managers in the US. So we probably don't get as much value for it, but good companies like Wise or Apple or Southwest Airlines, or there's great examples, already do this and spend a lot of money to do this. The market that's 15.5 serves is the middle market, from about 100 employees to
Perfect.
2,000 employees. These companies often have the aspirations to do this, but there's a gap. There's a gap in their financing ability they can't just throw money at it. There's a gap in their own leadership talent, and there's a gap in their data. 15.5 fills that gap for mid-market companies.
Can I ask you some questions about the lower not the lower, but the smaller companies that are not being handled by 15.5, but I'm guessing that you have at least some bit of advice and insights about it. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Because whenever we're talking, especially about software, it's built for large companies because the SaaS company wants more users. So naturally, it's built for those bigger companies themselves. But what
Most times,
about
yeah.
the other? Sorry?
I said most of the time, yes. In
Yeah,
particular, there are a lot of companies that try to serve SMBs in the mid-market, but you're right.
of course. Of course. I have.
Ones that we know are enterprise companies. Yeah.
That's it. I have been myself an SMB sales executive, so I understand that, yes, of course, there are those teams filtered specifically for the lowest and the smallest companies. But actually want to listen from your head and from your mouth. How does these small companies around 20, even 30, 50 people should manage their metrics when it comes to the talent optimization part of the business itself?
Yeah. I think that is a good question. In my experience, both as a leader of small companies, and I've had 3 or 4 in that range, and then obviously now with 15.5 at scale, with our many of our customers at scale, I think those are different, right? I mean, those are with there's been a lot of research about human tribes over the year, and at about 150 to 200 people, the tribal function breaks apart. You can no longer have a single group. You now have to have a group of groups. And so I think at the small company with the right transparency and communication and hiring discipline, everybody can be on the same page and work in a very fun way up until 100 employees or so. But it's when you cross over that boundary from a tribe to a tribe of tribes that you have to get really, really good at this stuff. It doesn't mean 15.5 has 1,000 customers under 100 employees that are having tons of success because they're building processes that they want to scale. But you don't necessarily need to do it yet at 20 to 30. There's an agility, there's a familiarity, there's a camaraderie and a team aspect and an energy at 20 to 30 people. It's when you start to expand where things can go off the rails.
Oh, yeah. I think it's actually a given, right? You have more things to take care about, more variables in the same team. It gets harder to keep a track about everything.
And there was a fascinating thread on Twitter about founder mode versus professional manager mode a while ago. And there's a death spiral that companies will get into between the tribe to the tribe of tribes. And it's that type of customer where 15.5 becomes the most valuable is when they're making that shift.
I can see that happening, and it's very nice.
My advice to smaller companies is maybe don't give a shit about any of this stuff. Just make sure your product has market fit and that you're making customers happy. And then once you figure that out and achieve product market fit, then you can worry about these things as you scale.
Perfect. I agree. I agree with you on that. It makes a lot of sense because otherwise, if those founders with those small teams start caring and being concerned about it all, they're going to die. They're going to break out. They're going to burn down.
You can go in and personally talk to every employee every day and make sure that people understand the products that you're trying to build and the market you're trying to serve and the culture you're trying to build. That doesn't scale, but in the near term, your biggest problem is your cash and your product market fit.
Yeah. I think we are in a good point to actually talk about the in-between of the scalability part. So we are now talking about the smaller companies. Eventually, some of them want to grow and they grow, right? So you have those early stage founders who had 10 people, 15 people, then they get the seed, goes to 200. That's where 15.5 comes in. And then they start having to manage it out of a sudden a lot of people. What's the biggest mistake you see these founders making when they're trying to scale that culture they had once it was with 15 people and now with 200?
Yeah. So there's this there's this transition between being yourself a manager and then being a leader. And that transition of becoming a leader is a whole set of learnings. Now, I've been through a lot of leadership development as a CEO in scale businesses. 15.5 really focuses on managers. We're helping frontline managers, maybe directors, to be better versions of themselves in a very data-oriented, cost-effective way. You don't have to bring a huge consultant in to make your managers better. You can look at your data and do it through 15.5 products. If you're becoming a CEO of a scaled business, my suggestion there is go get yourself a coach, join a peer group of CEOs, start learning as much as you can about leadership and no longer about entrepreneurship. That is a huge difference. That doesn't mean you don't have entrepreneurial roots forever. And there are certain times in the business where you're going to have to take your leadership hat off and just get your hands dirty and kick some ass. But in order to really get to Steve Jobs level or Bezos or Zuckerberg even, like go learn the difference between entrepreneurship and leadership.
That's a very good piece of advice. And I can actually see some people, actually a lot of them, even myself included, if I didn't know any better, would instead of participating in other groups, they would ask ChatGPT. Right? This is a topic that we wouldn't be talking 2 years ago, and now we are. They would go to a GPT bot, which is like leadership bot, everything that you
Yeah.
need to learn and understand how to become a better leader. At least it's better than nothing. Let's
Yeah,
give in
yeah, maybe.
this. It's better than
Yeah,
nothing.
better
But
than
it's
nothing.
noisy. You have so many. You don't know who did that AI. You don't know the prompts. You don't know how that AI was handled. What's a priority for the AI itself? So it's hot, yes, but it is noisy. My question is, do you have yourself a BS filter for AI-driven features that once you bat an eye, you know that that's BS? And if so, what's that filter? How do you make sure that you keep it rooted in the outcomes that actually move the needle towards, the success that the managers are looking for regarding those AIs that are just there to just clutter it all up?
Yeah. So we actually have had a lot of conversations about this internally, and it's very easy for every software company to just put a front end on one of the LLMs and just put it in the flow. And they're really good, right? I mean, just say, hey, help me write this better, or help ask it a question. And that's the most commoditized but helpful thing on the planet. What 15.5 is spending our research on is the combination of our customers' data and the LLM's native wisdom. And that's where the real differentiation comes in, is the ability to understand, not that a generic good manager does this behavior, but a manager that has an employee that's struggling with goal clarity, that's overpaid in the market, that has been at the company for 3 years, and the 3-year cohort turnover is 3 times higher than the rest of company average. You combine that data with the LLM, and now you have something super insightful for the manager and very personalized in that situation.
In each
So
context.
my BS, not that there's not value from it, but if a software company is just putting a front end on OpenAI, who cares? It's this intersection of personalization and unique data with the LLM.
I agree. Would you say that that's one of the most broken ways that companies are approaching talent optimization in itself? Or is there something even worse that you're seeing companies either doing or not doing, and by the fact that they're not doing anything, that's even worse?
I mean, the most destructive possible scenario is what most companies are doing. And that is just considering HR to be a group of clerks that take care of payroll and benefits and onboarding and offboarding. If that's your definition of HR, you are setting them up for failure, and you're not optimizing your talent. And that's why HR, has this like, they just slow me down. They don't know what they're doing. They're just puppets. All this, like, there's this like vitriol around HR. Let's put HR in a position to actually add business value and to understand gaps in manager-employee connections and fill those gaps. And that's real business value. So unfortunately, that happens in the enterprise, but not a lot in mid-market. That's the biggest problem. Hands down.
Ever since I
And that's
started,
that's not an HR problem. That's a CEO problem.
yeah, it's a CEO problem. That's what I was gonna get to. Ever since I started working globally, I mean, besides Brazil, I noticed how culture can change a lot in regards to these things that we're talking about. And by culture, I mean the regional culture, not even the company's culture. I'm Brazilian, so if I am a leader in a Brazilian company, maybe because I like talking, people will have an easier time with me. But we're in a remote world where I can be Brazilian in Brazil working for a leader in Vietnam. It's gonna be different. There is
Totally.
something that is gonna be different. Do you have an
Uh-huh.
advice for these, not only managers, but these professionals that are interfacing with different cultures when talking about leadership that we should discuss here?
I do. I'll just make one observation. It's in addition to regional cultures and global companies, and the world's been through a lot. Like we had lockdown
Hmm.
and COVID. We've had a crazy inflation across the world. We've had a quiet quitting. We've had social unrest. We have wars in certain regions, and so the complexity of leading in a global world or managing in a global world is cultural, it's company cultural. It's situational in the given time. People are, like you said, facing layoffs and AI replacing everybody, et cetera.
Yeah.
Think regardless of which complexity you're facing, realize that you're facing them all, and that no one situation is the same for any manager and any employee. And so the more data you gather and the more personalized you can get in your advice, the better. Hey, you're dealing with Vietnam and we've had layoffs in that office. And here are a set of tips for your next one-on-one with Billy because he's feeling low engagement and he's not sure what his goals are in the new world. And here's advice in how to be specific in Vietnam. Now, 15.5, the product can now do that.
Oh, that's nice.
Not because we know anything about natively about Vietnam, but the LLM does. And we
Yeah.
know that Billy just had a layoff and that we know that he's feeling underengaged and we know his manager has never actually had a hard conversation with him. So it's this combination of AI plus the personalization of the data that now becomes this really powerful way to do it.
It is.
And that
It
was
is.
so out of reach. That was out of reach, before we would have had to send Billy to the US and go to a leadership class and sit in some crazy hotel conference room and teach him about empathy and then send him back and hope that it worked. This is so much more powerful.
It is. It is. I remember even back in COVID when Among Us, the game released. Do you know about this game? And every single company was doing meetings inside Among Us to connect, to make sure that everybody was seeing each other. It's a different way to make sure that
Yeah,
people stay tuned, right? But it's a good one. You don't
100%.
need
But
to.
by the way, does any one of those companies that did that know if it worked?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
No,
They
they don't
no.
know if it worked. It was just a good
They won't
idea.
ever. Yeah.
It was a blank,
Yeah.
like back to targets, not blankets. Let's do things that are targeted, that we can then close the loop.
Hmm.
And I do want to just talk about that for a second, and because your audience knows a lot about marketing. There's a famous quote, I forget, PT Barnum or somebody said I know that 50% of my marketing works and 50% of my marketing doesn't work. I just don't know what 50%
Yeah.
it is. And that was what marketing was before. And now with the internet and digital marketing and Google and cookies and tracking, a marketer knows exactly the ROI of every dollar that they spend. And a marketer has no longer just become a creative person that builds billboards and campaigns. They're a data analyst and they're a team that's data driven. That has to happen for people. That has to happen for HR. HR has to go through that same transition.
I agree. HR having to evolve, but not because of the HR people that are not evolving. As you said a few minutes ago, the CEOs need to understand that HR needs to evolve. This is the next shift that companies need to sort themselves out. This
100%.
actually brings me, Jim, to my last question of today. I think we will close this brilliantly. Remote jobs, people from Brazil working with Vietnamese or the other way around, people from the West Coast of the US having to work with the East Coast of the US. You have it all, right? It's such a different moment. The market itself is so much different right now. And it will be even 5 years from now. We're going to have you and I a podcast 5 years from now. We can actually scrape the questions that I asked today and the answers that you gave today, and we can reshoot them 5 years and it will be different,
Totally.
right? It will be so much different. So my question
Yep.
to you is looking ahead,
Mm-hmm.
is there, if there is, but I hope and I think there is there one idea or principle that you're doubling down that you believe will define the future of work and performance that companies must are working with it.
Yeah. So yes, and you gave a bit of an example, which is this transcription power of taking the words that we've used in an unstructured conversation and harnessing them for the future. And at 15.5, I think I've explained, we believe in the power of data. And we believe in the power that data gives you uniqueness to be able to look at manager by manager, employee by employee, and give recommendations to improve performance, engagement, and retention. So that's us. The rituals that you have to run for HR are kind of hard. You have to do a survey and everybody has to do it.
No, that's true.
Performance review, everybody's like, oh God, it's performance review season. I got to write this stuff, etc. And in reality, if we're smart about tapping into the flow of work over the course of a year, we have everything we need in the form of data to understand our performance, to understand our engagement. If we had a transcriber that was connected to this call and we were having a manager to employee call, by the way, we bought a company called Kona that does this. We would be able to reverse engineer what your engagement is as a employee. We would be able to understand your performance over time. We'd certainly be able to understand my skills as a manager and what I can improve on. And so what we're doubling down on is, yes, the rituals are important, but we can reverse engineer all of the data that we need by following the flow of work, by transcribing meetings, by surfacing emails, by looking at things like Slack. And that creates a really powerful efficiency for us to then make recommendations against. That's where we're doubling down.
And you see, everything that you just said right now, companies have been doing so for other departments. Sales, for example. I have myself an AI transcriber. Yes, exactly. I have myself a transcriber that helped me sort myself across the customers, but nobody ever thought about doing it internally.
That's what, and we realize that these kids out of UCLA at Kona that are just amazing entrepreneurs, that they needed to be part of 15.5. And so, and you're right, the power of Gong, or the power of, there's this company, Sequoia company in San Francisco called Rattle. That's amazing. But we use those for our sales and our external conversations. Why aren't we using these for our manager conversations?
What? Yeah. I think that's the piece of thinking that I will leave everybody who's watching us with. Jim, thank you so much for sharing how 15.5 works, and by your own mind how it all works. I agree with it all. I think you're an amazing leader. I'm very much glad to find amazing leaders here at the show, because we need more of them. Even though it looks like there are a bunch of them, I don't think it's the case. I think it's actually the opposite. And as we just said, we just spent 40 minutes talking about it. It's usually not the person's fault. It's because they don't have support to become better. Because the CEO is not prioritizing, because it's prioritizing another thing, and then human relations inside the team is not a priority. So we're left empty-handed. But 15.5 is here to help, and that's the point. Everyone who's watching us till now, you're going to have the links below in the description. Do follow Jim's account on LinkedIn. Do follow 15.5 on LinkedIn, and as well on their website and social media. Engagement saves lives nowadays, and we want to make sure that people get better and get better managed through 15.5. Amazing having you here. Thank you so much again. We wish you all the best, not only at 15.5, but everything else that you touch. Let's stay connected. That's it. And for everyone else, this has been Victor. Catch you the next time.